Our first speaker, Colin, will illustrate how people's attitudes, actions, and ability to both give and take can make differences in their daily activities to foster core business partnerships. It's really about taking people in business and making them fans of each other.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was a crystal clear blue Saturday morning in New York City. One of those days in June that you just look like it's the 10 best days of the year. And Juan, our bellman, was standing out in front of the hotel. Up walks a guest, and the guest is carrying a cake box and a balloon. Juan engages the guest and says, "Hello, sir. May I ask you what you're celebrating?" The guest goes on to tell him that it's their daughter's 7th birthday, and they're going to spend the entire day in New York City. And they wanted to make sure that they celebrated her birthday first thing in the morning before it got out of hand, because they knew when they got back late that evening, they were going to be exhausted. Juan goes, "Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. Is there anything I can do to make your day better? Please don't hesitate to call me. I will take care of whatever you need." The guest goes, "Thank you very much. By the way, Mr. Guest, may I have your daughter's last name? May I have your daughter's name?" "Her name is Madison." "And may I ask what room you're staying in?" "We're staying in room 207. The guest goes upstairs, up in the elevators, and Juan runs over to the front desk and says to the front desk, "Hey, the guest in room 207, she's celebrating her 7th birthday. Her name is Madison." Goes over to the concierge desk and says the same exact thing. Runs back to the chef, makes sure the chef knows that the guest in room 207, her name is Madison. She's celebrating her 7th birthday. Goes down to housekeeping, tells them the story, and then makes a final pass through the restaurant and tells every server in the restaurant that the guest in room 207, the daughter's name is Madison, she's celebrating her 7th birthday. About 45 minutes later, the elevator door is open, out pops this balloon, the front desk noticed right away, and as soon as that young lady walks off the door, they say, "Happy birthday, Madison." How do you think Madison felt at that moment? Pretty great. She had a smile on from ear to ear. The whole family walks into the restaurant. They go over and they sit in a corner table. And Gabby, one of the servers, walks over, looks Madison straight in the eye and says, "Is your name Madison? Are you celebrating your 7th birthday? Our chef has created something very special for you." And out come Mickey Mouse pancakes. For those of us who have children, we all know that Mickey Mouse pancakes is nothing but 3 circles on a plate. But to Madison, this was a remarkable experience. They go out, they spend the entire day on the city, they get back very late, and just as they expected, they were exhausted. They get up to the guest room, and on the bed is one of those swans made out of towels, and a card signed by every single person in the housekeeping department wishing Madison a happy birthday. I tell that story for a number of different reasons, but I like to start with the idea of when that guest or that family comes back to New York City, do you think they're going to stay anywhere else? They stayed in our hotel 12 times over the next 2 years while I was working there. I also like to highlight, how much do you think that entire experience cost? Maybe a couple dollars for the card, maybe a couple dollars for the pancakes? Do you think that guest told anybody about that experience? They went home and they told all of their friends. And nowadays, it probably would have been posted on Facebook, posted on Instagram, maybe a snap about the entire experience. They would talk about their experience. What would happen to that family if they came back to our hotel and it wasn't a perfect experience? Would they be forgiving? Would they return again? Absolutely. And that actually happened to that family. We had a not so good experience with them later on in their subsequent stays. But guess what? They came back time and time again. Could you call that guest a fan of the hotel? They absolutely were. They were a fan of the hotel. The title of this talk is Creating Fans Through Culture, Commitment, and Consistency. And I want to tell you, we're not creating better customer service through culture, commitment, and consistency. It's about creating fans. Because when you think about customer service nowadays, customer service is ordinary. Customer service is just, it's transactional. We think about customer service when we think about the deli counter. Now serving number 42, and you're lucky if you get a smile out of the team member. That's customer service. We're trying to create a fan culture. That's where we're at. How do we create a fan culture? Because at the end of the day, when we create these fans, when we create these experiences, we're going to have them come back. And when we think about the story that I just shared with you, who created those experiences? Excuse me, our people. Everybody was bought in. So your people are your fan creators, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on how we get them to create fan experiences. Let's start with the word fan. Who has fans? Sports teams. Sports teams has fans. Actors? Other celebrities? Musicians? How about you? Do you have fans? I would bet that everybody in this room has fans, but what we want to do is we want to create more fans. Right? Because fans bring with them the traits of a great fan. And what are some of those traits? Loyalty. Fans are loyal. Devoted. Fans are devoted. They're understanding. They're forgiving. They're invested in your success. When you bring those traits of the fan in, and we get all of those things, we are able to create those experiences where we want to try and take it. So thinking about that fan and creating that fan culture, we want to make sure that we're always pulling it all together. Another thing about fans is you're creating that relationship. Right? Everybody has a relationship with something that they're a fan of, right? Whether it be your sports team. But when you create those relationships and you bring it in, right, it becomes a partnership. There's a give and take. There's an understanding. And you create that understanding, right? You're going to be a fan the day after and then so. Think about Sunday's football games. Do you think there's anybody who isn't a Jacksonville Jaguar, anybody who was a Jacksonville Jaguar fan that's not a fan on Monday morning? We want to make sure that we're out there creating fans and that customer experiences. So who are your fans? Well, we want to make sure that your team members are fans of you. We want to make sure that your partners are fans of you. We want to make sure that your guests are fans of you. So let me tell you how we went about this. We created a fan culture. And the whole idea behind that was we wanted to make sure that everything that we did was focused on just that one idea of creating fans. So the first thing we did is we came up and tried to decide what was most important to us. And in that story that I just shared with you, what was most important to us was making memorable experiences. And I call making memorable experiences a key phrase, right? Just a few words, but it kind of tells you the entire story. And the idea behind a key phrase is making sure that it's communicatable to your team so they can understand it. So in that hotel, it was making memorable experiences. And another hotel that I worked in, it was being the most sought-after hotel in Miami. And it was most sought after because we took it to heart and said to ourselves, if we were the most sought after hotel by guests, we'd increase demand. If we were the most sought after hotel by team members that were looking for a job, we could then make sure that we only put the cream of the crop in our business and only the best people were working with us. If we were the most sought after hotel by our partners, and our partners in the hotel world are places like Expedia, Hotels.com, Travelocity, our international wholesalers. If they wanted to work with us, it would only benefit everybody that was there. Personally, my key phrase is I want to create inspiring conversations. Because if me and the people that I work with are not creating inspiring conversations, we're not going to be able to move our business along. But let's take one that everybody knows. Disney. Everybody knows Disney's good for their guest experiences. Their key phrase is make people happy. Make people happy. Easy to understand, easy to execute. Who doesn't want to make people happy? When you think about your key phrase, you want to make sure that it's something that communicates with your team and something that they can buy into. Because when you really think about making people happy, that's great, right? But if their key phrase was sell more tickets, would that really resonate with the team? The next thing that we did to try and instill this culture is we had a giant party. Everybody got together. We talked about what was most important to us. We talked about the benefits of it to the hotel. And we told them that this is where we're going to take things. Then we took from this big party, over the next few weeks, we actually sat down with every single team member in small groups and explained to them again what our key phrase was, why it was important, and we wanted to make sure we explained to them what was in it for them. There has to be buy-in from your team to make these things happen. So what's in it for them? And if we were the most sought-after hotel in Miami, and all of these things happened, we'd have more business. If we had more business, we'd have more hours of work. We had more hours of work, we'd have more profits, right? And everybody would be winning because they'd be making more money. But we also added in the idea that you're going to be able to say you've worked at the best place in Miami, the most sought-after hotel. So you have to make sure that when you have this culture, you create your key phrase, you have to make sure that you bring it home and make it matter to your team members so that it's something that's tangible for them, and make sure that the key phrase is understandable. The next thing we need to do is you got to lead by example, right? We had to be the people who led the charge. We had to live up to our key phrase in every single thing that we did. We had to make sure that our key phrase, make memorable experiences or be the most sought after hotel, we lived it with everybody we spoke to. Because when we think about who can be a fan, anybody or everybody can be a fan. Anybody can, everybody should. So anybody we came in contact with, we tried to make them a fan. We think about the postman, we think about our partners, we think about the FedEx driver or the garbage man, or a guest. So as leaders, we all got on board and said, this is what we need to do, and we made sure it affected everything that we did. And take it one step further, right? It's all about leading by example, but it's all about walking the talk. If you're going to say it, you got to do it. Because I can promise you, you can't create fan experiences for your guests, or your people won't create fan experiences for your guests if you don't create them for them. The last step was the consistency. We empowered our team to do whatever they needed to do to make memorable experiences. We empowered our team to do whatever they needed to do to become the most sought-after hotel in Miami. That means we trusted them. We trusted them to make good decisions. And guess what? It did not always go as planned. We had mistakes along the way, and we needed to make sure that we coached our team to success. So when I think about coaching, I want to just leave you with a phrase about coaching, right? You have to kind of think it through in terms of how do I coach somebody to be more successful? And I look at it as a positive way. Hey, Stephen, I thought it was really great the way that you took care of this guest. In the future, here are a couple ways that I think it can be even better. But thank you so much for the time that you put into this. Hey, Stephen, that's really great how you did that. Here are a few ways that you can make it better. And it doesn't have to just be better for the guests, right? It may need to be a better experience for us as a business. Here, make it a win-win. But here's a few ways we can make it better, and I really appreciate the job that you did. You got to coach for success. Because if you're going to create fan experiences, and you're truly going to go out there and you're going to make people want to be fans of you, you cannot yell at them. Would you ever yell at a guest? Would you ever yell at a customer? You got to make sure that you're creating the same experience for them and you coach them to be successful. That's kind of how we did it in a nutshell. How should you do it? I believe wholeheartedly that you should start with your team. Determine what that key phrase is amongst your leadership and roll it out so that every team member feels it. Every team member understands it. Every team member knows that you guys are bought in and you're committed to making this happen and you're going to practice it consistently and make every single team member in your organization a fan of you. Because you can't create fan experiences unless you're already having that experience yourself. Start with your team. Then move to your partners. Think about the people that you work with, whether you're a supplier or a distributor, a supplier to a distributor to a supplier. Create fan experiences for each other. Live up to your key phrase. Make sure that everybody's on board. Make sure that that relationship is grown, that give and take is grown, that there's a total understanding. You're both fans of each other. And I'm confident if you're able to create fan experiences for your team and you're able to create fan experiences for your partners, you'll be able to create them for your customers. And your customers are going to drive the revenue. I want to pause here for just a moment, and I'm going to see what kind of questions that we might have from the audience. Thank you very much. How do you get the whole organization to buy in? What happens if one group in the company is not on board? How do you get the entire organization to buy in? We started with the idea of what would our key phrase be and what was most important to us. And as a leadership group, we sat down and we hashed it out. And the conversation went back and forth time and time again. And I'm going to tell you, we spent 2 days in a hotel ballroom trying to work it all out. But the idea behind that was if we were able to work that all out, when we all left there, we had to be behind it. So how do you get the whole organization to buy in? It has to start with the leadership in the room, and everybody has to be bought into it. What happens if one group in the company is not on board? Well, I'm going to go back to the idea that it has to be a leader. But I also believe wholeheartedly that if only one group in the company is on board, that it can spread. What happened in our organization is that we went through this process and we rolled it out to every single team member and we said, this is what's important to us, and here's how we're going to get it there, and here's how it benefits you. We did it. And then I had a few people on the team that couldn't get there. And that was okay. Right? Because if we lost a few people that couldn't get there or wouldn't get there, who do we replace them with? People that want to make it happen. But you have to be able to get to that point. Right, that you're willing to let it go. And I'll tell you, in our hotel there, we lost a 10-year employee because he couldn't understand it, and we lost a 20-year employee because he couldn't get it. But then the hotel grew and grew, and there weren't any naysayers. Give us an example how you took an absolute non-fan and made them a fan. I'm a firm believer in practice what you preach. We wanted to make sure that we created fan experiences for our team members. So, the young man's name was Mark. And he was my director of revenue, a very important position in the hotel. And his job was to make sure that we are selling every room at the highest rate. Very important. But he didn't want to do anything more than look at his computer screen. That's not what it was. He wanted to be that tech guy. So we took baby steps with Mark. And we thought about ways that we can actually make him feel comfortable with the entire idea of creating fans, right? By giving him the opportunity to be the center of attention. And then we took his team members and we coached him on how to coach his team members to be successful. And all of a sudden I came in one day and he actually looked me straight in the eye and he said, Colin, I get it. I understand where we want to take things, and I understand how it affects me as a revenue manager. So I'm a firm believer in making sure that you create those fan experiences out of your team, and that way it'll happen. Can you spend too much time creating fans of your people? Well, we know, right, that our business goes on regardless of what we're trying to do. But I believe that this is a cultural change. Right? We are actually trying to take things to the next level. And you really can't spend too much time doing it, but you have to make sure that your other business obligations don't go by the wayside. But then I would always look about the idea of how do you bring those other business obligations into the job that we do? How can you make that happen? And an example is that we added a morning meeting every day. So we usually had a staff meeting once a week, but we added a morning meeting every single day. So every morning you got together and you talked about the business aspects of things, but to support that creating fan culture that we were trying to create, we actually added a success story. And every day we wanted to hear a success story from somebody in the room who did something yesterday that helped create a fan, that helped us live up to what our key phrase was, whether it become the most sought after hotel or make memorable experiences or make people happy, whatever the key phrase was, we wanted to make sure we added that to our morning meeting so that it would be infectious. Because as soon as everybody in the room is creating great experiences, all you want to do is create more great experiences. So that's how I think I'd answer that question. Great. Are there any more questions? Excellent. When I think about where we're going to take this now, right? The title of this talk was Creating Fans Through Culture, Commitment, and Consistency. And remember that it's the opposite of customer service. It's not about transactional. It's about creating an experience for every single one of anybody you come in contact with. Remember that your people are your fan creators, and the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're making fans out of your people, because they're the ones that are going to make fans out of your guests and your partners. The one thing to keep in mind, though, right, is you have to make sure that they understand what's in it for them, what's most important to them, and when they do, they're going to buy in. I can tell you straight up right here as I'm standing in front of you that this is going to be the work of the rest of your life. Because if you truly want to create this culture that we're speaking about, it's consistently changing or constantly changing. And you're going to need to keep up with it. But I'll tell you, it's worth it. And I want to leave you with just one final thought. Imagine if every supplier in this room wanted to create fans out of every distributor in this room. And every distributor in this room truly wanted to create fans out of every supplier. And everybody else who's neither supplier nor distributor wanted to create fans out of anybody and everybody they came in contact with. If that happened, could it transform your industry? Could it transform your business? I want to thank you very much for your time today. Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet all of you. I will be available later for questions. Thank you very much.